So what we're going to look at briefly is how to deconstruct a standard. And what's especially nice is they're actually pretty easy to write if you use whatever expectations for learning are listed in your curriculum or content elaborations or clusters, those kinds of things. So you start with your model curriculum, that'll help you the best. And it's really easy to start at the tier that includes laying the base or mastering the standard. So let's take a look, if you would, at how we could do this. So you're going to go to your standards, and I'm going to go to ODE, and I'm going to grab a modern world history example because that's what I know. And let's kind of scroll down and find one that we can use that's kind of a brief one. Let's go here to Content Statement 9. Content Statement 9 for Modern World History is about industrialization. And they have essential knowledge in those social studies model curriculum that are called content statements, as they do in science. But let's take a look at where our verb is. And in your own model curriculum, you will be able to find the cognitive verb. In this case, it says to analyze social, political, and economic effects of industrialization. I'm going to go ahead and copy that into a document. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it here. So I have my expectation for learning. This is how the standard is going to drive this deconstruction piece. So as we think about it, we want to have I can statements that are about prior knowledge and skills needed to scaffold up to the standard. We're going to call those laying the base. And then we also want to have those standards that represent what it is that exactly students must be able to do or know or understand. And we're going to call that mastering the standard. And then we'll have a last category called going beyond. And that's to prepare for those students who are ready to be enriched and move a little bit past this particular standard as it's written. So as we go back to looking at our expectation for learning, we certainly want to recognize the tiers, laying the base, our prior knowledge piece, mastering the standard, which is the piece that will represent what it is that students must be able to know and do and understand, and then going beyond, which will represent our enrichment piece. And we're going to start each of these with I can. And as we go through, we want to keep in mind that we want these to be lesson length. So we may have more than one I can statement for each of these tiered levels. And I find it easiest to start with either laying the base or mastering the standard. Let's start with mastering the standard in this piece. So we're going to go right to the language of the particular expectation for learning, the cognitive verb, and we're going to keep the rigor. I can analyze the social. Now here's where we can go lesson length. I would, in a lesson, probably not teach social, political, and economic effects in the same day. I can analyze the social effects of industrialization on Western Europe and the world. Now, as a teacher, if I was going to just look at social effects of industrialization on Western Europe one day and social effects of industrialization of Western Europe on the second day or another lesson day, I might go in and put this here and I would change it to Western Europe or the world. And then I have 2 lesson length standards, but I'm not done. I also need, I can analyze the political effects political effects, and again, I might want to think about separating it out, and so forth and so on. Now, in order for a student to be able to analyze the social, political, and economic effects of industrialization on Western Europe and the world, there are some things that I think they might need to be able to do. They might need to be able to define social, political, and economic effects, because those words might not mean anything to them. And so I don't want to assume that, because that could be something that could be in the way of a student being able to attain the standard. I also want to maybe think about defining industrialization. That might stand in their way. And these might not be lesson length alone, but I might group them together. I might put them into with some other skill-based standards that I'm working with as well. But these laying the base kinds of techniques are noticed low on Bloom's taxonomy. And then I would probably have some others. I might need to have them be able to identify effects of industrialization. Just list them before they would be able to do the analysis of those. And you can continue in that vein and you could have more I can statements. And then finally, going beyond, what would a student who needs to be able to analyze the social, political, and economic effects of industrialization on the Western Europe and the world, what else would they need to be, what could they do to go beyond that? A kid who can already do that might need to begin looking at current events. They might want to look at some other samples of this. They might want to do some judgment. We want to think about higher in Bloom's. So going beyond would allow me to think about a student who can already analyze social, political, and economic effects of industrialization on Western Europe. Maybe I want to have them I can judge which effects were most significant to the world today. And I probably want to grab some of the language here. Which effects of industrialization were most significant to the world today? I may never need to use this I can statement if students aren't ready to go beyond, but it's very possible that I will need it with one or two students. And having it written will already prepare me ahead of time to be able to help those students and meet them where they are when I have their pre-assessment results. And I now know that this is something significant for them to look at.